We almost had it. The American Cancer Society. Okay, LeToy, this must is going to be a very impactful conversation because I don't know why we're having such difficulty doing this intro today. Welcome to the Good Living Now podcast, where we talk to real people about real change leading to real health. I'm your host, Harold LaFall, and today we're going to be talking about a topic that is deeply personal for so many of us, and that's cancer. You know, the American Cancer Society released a report in January that said that approximately 2 million Americans would get diagnosed with cancer this year. My guest today is a stage 3C ovarian cancer survivor whose family has been deeply impacted by cancer as well. Her name is LeToy. Welcome to the show, LeToy.
Hi,
Hey,
thank you for
LeToy.
having me. Hi, Earl.
Well,
How are
LeToy,
you?
I want to go back. I want to go back to 2014 when you got diagnosed with 3C ovarian cancer.
Yes.
What was going on with you?
Life. Yes, life was going on. I guess it's hard to say what was going on. I get that question a lot when
Mhm.
as it relates to my diagnosis because it's rare. At the time, it was 2014. I was 34. I had two young children. Um, and I was just, being that mom on the go, two athletic children, just busy and just everything was wearing heavy on me. Um, I was on my regular doctor visits, and my doctor at the time, my gynecologist, was concerned as it relates to some test results that came back. So they wanted to do an ultrasound. So, because I've never heard of ovarian cancer prior to my diagnosis, I
Mhm.
the symptoms that I had was normal to me.
Mm.
As a woman, you get your monthly cycles. So I
Mhm.
had, some months it would be irregular, some months would be regular. The pain would be mild, sometimes excruciating. So it would be hard to tell.
Mm.
But as I became more educated, all of those signs that I was, having at the different moments were related to ovarian cancer. But again, I didn't know. I have never heard of ovarian cancer prior to my diagnosis. So when the doctor informed me, that I had to have an ultrasound, they were more so stating that I had a cyst, and maybe fibroids and so on and so forth. Now, of course, in our community, we hear a lot about fibroids. Every woman in my family, elder
Right.
woman, had it, including my mom. So I was like,
Mhm.
oh, okay. So I got fibroids. It's
Right.
normal.
Right. Right. Right.
So
Right.
that is what I was expecting in my exams to for it to be
Mhm.
fibroids, which I was told that by my doctor that it was a
Mhm.
fibroid cyst and it was sitting on my left ovary. And so they did quite a few tests because by it being internal diagnosis, it was hard for them to really see what was affecting and what was growing inside of me. So I've had ultrasounds, I had other womanly exams that you
Mhm.
have, and they still was hoping that it was a fibroid cyst and that it was large, that I had to have it removed.
And so, Latoya, so you would have your normal cycle, and that was the pain only during your cycle, or did you have pain outside of, that time of the month?
So that was the tricky thing. It was only during my cycle. Um, so during my cycle, it would times where I would be in so much pain that I was laying on the floor, and it felt like, as a mom, it felt like I was giving birth or I was going through
Wow.
contractions, that it was so much pain. And then recall visiting my mom's house at the time, and she had noticed that my stomach area was fairly large. And I was like, oh no, nothing's wrong. I was in
Mm.
denial. I hadn't been working out. I hadn't been eating right. So, you know how you
Hmm.
go to your parents or your grandparents' house and it's like, oh, you didn't gain some weight. So I was
Right,
like,
right, right,
no, no, I'm okay. I'm okay.
right, right, right.
And one time I noticed that a clot had came outside of, when I was bathing,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
I was like, "Ooh, this is large." Like I didn't know if I
Right,
had, because I was in a relationship at the time. I didn't know
right,
if, it was it had me questioning what it was. So the
right, right.
following
Gotcha.
doctor's visit, I did bring it to my doctor's attention, and that's when the test started to become a conversation between us. So he wanted
Mm.
me to monitor the next few months. I think it was like he said 2 months or 3 months he would see me again just to monitor the pain during the time of my cycle. So I did
Hmm.
that, and I told him, he asked me on a scale of 1 to 10, was 10 being the highest, um how did I feel each month? And
Right.
I told them every month it would get worse.
Wow.
So that's when they started to take tests and everything.
And when did they discover that it wasn't fibroids, that in fact it was ovarian cancer?
Doing my surgery.
Surgery.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Doing my surgery.
so you were having surgery for,
The removal of my cyst that they assumed was a
oh,
cyst sitting on my left ovary.
okay, gotcha.
Yes.
Wow. And
Yeah.
so had there been any history at that point of cancer in your family? Because you were 34, that's really young, isn't it?
Yeah. 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 So on my mom's side, no one prior to
Mhm.
that I was aware of, my grandparents. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to meet my great grandparents on my mom's side,
Mhm.
but from my grandparents to myself, no one.
Mhm.
On my dad's side, I did have an aunt who had ovarian cancer. No, I'm sorry, she had a form of gynecological cancer. It wasn't ovarian. I
Mhm.
can't remember which form of cancer it was, but she did
Mhm.
have cancer prior to my diagnosis. But that was the only person that was closely related through my bloodline that I can
Right.
recall had cancer. Um,
Wow. So you get out of surgery, you're thinking you're just going there for them to remove the fibroids, and they discover it's ovarian cancer. How did they tell you?
so that was the part that I was very upset because during the procedure. Before the prepping and everything, I had they told me that the procedure would take less than an hour to remove the cyst, and then I can have recovery time and so on and so forth. Give or take, I should be out 3 to 4 hours. So I think I started at 8 o'clock. I had a friend, two friends of mine that took me in, and we had made lunch reservations because they said it was
Mhm.
outpatient surgery,
Right.
and we were going to have lunch and just celebrate that this stage of whatever I assumed it to be at the time was over.
Mhm.
And I didn't wake up until the procedure actually was like 10 hours. So I didn't wake up.
Wow.
I had my cell phone and my phone was ringing. And that's what woke me up. And it was a friend, another friend who was not there doing, when I checked in, calling. And I can hear her crying, saying that she was lost inside of the hospital. Where are you? Where? And I was like, what's going on? She was like,
Mhm.
and she hung the phone up. So when she hung the phone up, I asked the transporter, like, where am I? And it was dark. You
Mhm.
can tell, through the windows that it was darker than when I went in before. So I was like, where am I, sir? He was like, oh, I'm taking and transporting you to your room. I said, my room? When I get in the
Mhm.
room, my entire family is there.
Wow.
So I was very confused.
Mhm.
I looked at my sister's face and she wouldn't look at directly at me. So that's when I knew that something was wrong. My mom was kept getting phone calls and kept stepping out the room. And then my brother at the time, well, he's currently still he's a pescatarian, and And he had just traveled from overseas because he played basketball overseas. So he used to always come back and tell us how the food is so different in other countries. And, and that was, when he transitioned his lifestyle from eating meat. So he just continued to say, it's the meat. And I said, the meat, what's going on?
You still didn't know what was
I
happening.
still did not know. He just said the meat. And I'm like, the meat, like what? That was my first words, like, what's going on? So everyone just left the room. So I don't know if they had a conversation on how to approach me coming back, because the questions was like, why am I here? So why is everyone here, first of all? So no one told me. My mom made
Mm.
everyone leave, and she stayed there, and she just wouldn't tell me anything. So the next morning, because I couldn't sleep, of course,
Mm-hmm.
the doctor came in, my doctor at the time, and he was just like, the look in his eyes, he said, "You are a miracle." And I said, what happened? And he said,
Mm-hmm.
the doctors never came in here and talked to you? I said, no. And he said, it was cancer. And he left out the room. And I said,
That was it.
cancer? That was it.
And that, wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's exactly, your face is exactly how I was looking at the time.
You know, it's 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 like with all the training you think that they have, that they would
Hmm.
know, that they would handle this better. Because you're making me think about when I got my diagnosis. When they called me, the doctor never even told me I had cancer over the phone. He said that we need to talk about your options. He never
Hmm.
even said, and he didn't even say anything till I went into my appointment to talk about my options. But he never even told me what was going on.
Right, right.
So then what happened after that?
So when he left, my friend that was there, I just started screaming at him. And I was, what is going on? I'm trying to call everyone, no one's called. My mom had left, but she was coming back. And they were actually waiting on the oncologist to come back in to explain. Because from what my gynecologist, he wasn't properly trained for the information, to give me the
Mhm,
information on
mm.
what had transpired. So they were waiting for um, the oncologist to come in. So he came around noon, because at the time my mom and my grandmother had made it back up there. So he explained that when they did the incision to remove the cyst is when they saw that it was cancer. So they had to immediately get the approval from my mom to proceed with the removal of all of my quote unquote womanly parts. So,
Oh, so while you were in surgery, they
mhm,
called your mom and told your mom what was going on and got okay, gotcha.
yes. So, at the time I had signed that if it was something that was abnormal, that I would have a partial. So, because I had signed for permission to have a partial hysterectomy. The cancer had spread at 3C. That means it has attacked all of my internal womanly parts and organs. So they had to get the approval. My mom went ahead and approved for a full hysterectomy. So that's why the procedure took longer than expected. So they had to cut me open. Because at first it was just a small incision. So when they cut me open, they removed everything that they can see visible with the eye.
Mm,
Um, so that was the first start of my recovery journey.
mm. And so how long were you like in the hospital after they removed all of, everything that they could remove?
So it was around about 2 weeks that I was there. And then I went
Mhm,
home they gave me recommendations for a treatment plan. So
mhm.
my
And what was
mom,
that? What was the treatment? What was the treatment
so
plan?
for the oncologist that I saw there, he stated that that would have to come from he didn't practice the medicine anymore. So he
Mm,
gave me
mhm.
3 doctors that he will refer me to, that he trained. So I had an appointment with all 3 doctors. But prior to that, my mom had called the Cancer Treatment Center of America in Zion, Illinois. So when I got home, I think not even a week, I can't recall the timeline, that her and I was packing up to stay at the Cancer Treatment Center for a week. So they did all type of tests from every cancer, breast, um, uh, uh, colonoscopy,
because there's a correlation between ovarian cancer and like breast cancer and other cancers. Is that right?
That is correct. That is correct. So that's when I really learned a lot and educated myself there, because I had nothing but time, so much information. And then they had different educators that would come and talk to you about the disease and what I did have, and inform me on, just so to help me make the sound decision on how I wanted to treat my cancer at the time.
So what was going on through your mind? I can't even imagine. Here you are going in thinking that you have fibroids, and it's a kind of a in and out kind of procedure, and now you are dealing with ovarian cancer. What was going on through your mind? What were you thinking? How were you feeling?
My children. My children. I was diagnosed July 11th. My son's birthday was July 19th. So we had planned a party for him that week, and just not being there to celebrate his birthday. My sister, his dad, they picked up the slack. Thank God there, but just the first birthday not being present. So I knew that this fight wasn't about me; it was about them.
Right.
My daughter, she was younger, and just trying to see how to explain to them what was going on, because my brother at the time, he had to come and get something from the hospital to get into my house for me, and he had my children. He had picked my children up, and he brought them inside the hospital, and I didn't know, and I was late. And when they saw me, the nurse was taking my vitals. So my daughter literally ran into the bathroom and locked herself in the bathroom I couldn't even move to get her. So that was what's going on through my mind.
That's the same thing when I had my cancer experience. That's all I was thinking about is my son, because I'm a single parent, and I was just worried about what's going to happen to him if something happens to me. And how do I tell him? How do I tell him that I have? Because, when people in general hear cancer, all this fear is surrounded by hearing even the word. And I knew that if I wasn't kind of secure in my faith and in my knowing that I was going to be all right, I knew my son would be able to sense it and feel it. So I had to kind of get my mindset right before I told him, because I didn't want him just to go into freak out mode, And and so they're there. Your children are there at the hospital. Do they then come in and do you talk to them while you're in the hospital?
I didn't have the courage.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what I was experiencing. So I didn't know how to approach it. So I just, hugged them, kissed them, and
it's like getting that diagnosis. It just, for me, I just was kind of numb through the whole experience. I didn't know, I'm going through the motions of talking to oncologists, urologists, and it's just like, it was so much happening at once.
Right.
And for me, all my doctors were trying to move me quickly to have this procedure and this, and I didn't know, I didn't know. Right. You don't know. You just don't know what to do, and you are just relying on these medical professionals who are overwhelmed and sometimes undereducated, and maybe not have a lot of empathy, because they just see you. I just felt like I was just, somebody on the chart. Let me check. That's how I felt when I was going through the process. And so your treatment plan, did you have to have chemotherapy, radiation?
Yes. So that was the tricky part for me, because like you stated, it was just, let's quickly get you on the treatment plan. So
Mm-hmm.
being in the cancer treatment center, I was very fast educated by, everyone there. And all I
Mm-hmm.
kept hearing was treat and then proceed, meaning they treat the cancer and then they proceed with surgeries and everything. So I had recall when the oncologist stated that he had already proceeded to remove everything he can see visible with the eye. So that
Mm-hmm.
kept replaying in my head. So what are you treating? Because he had already removed the tumors that he saw.
Right.
So when I went back and spoke with him to just get his, opinion, he did encourage me. He said, I don't uh, do the medication or treat the cancer. He said, but what I can say that, sometimes the chemotherapy can help with removing what I couldn't see with the eye, any dormant that cancer that can be, any cancer that can be laying dormant.
Mm-hmm.
So the cancer treatment center wanted to treat the cancer first. They wanted to
Mm-hmm.
do, I'm sorry, not first because that wasn't a procedure. They wanted to
Mm-hmm.
give me radiation, then go into
Mm-hmm.
give me chemo. And I was like, okay, I'll think about it. Once
Mm-hmm.
they gave, we did all the tests and the results came back for everything else that they, did the exams on. I, went home and I was just thinking, praying hard on the decision. So that was a place that my mom wanted me to go to. So I asked her, I said, can we visit the other three doctors that, he recommended? And she was like, we were there. Why you don't want to do what they said? I said, one, it's far. They stating that I would have to be out there for a week. Who would take care of my children? And she was, which I knew they were in good hands, but I
Right.
just wanted to be somewhere where I can physically come home to them. So one of the hospital, the doctors, he didn't have a appointment soon enough for me to come in and see. So the one doctor that I did see, he went over my files and he stated that something I wanted to hear. He said, I think we can just treat you with the chemotherapy. He
Mm-hmm.
said, I wouldn't recommend radiation because what I assume, everything he had already proceeded with the procedure. So I just canceled off everyone. I said, Mom, I want him to treat my cancer. And she was like, why? Why wouldn't you do radiation? Why? She didn't understand it. And
Mm-hmm.
I just prayed on it and I just made the appointment on my own. So I had to have 6 rounds of chemotherapy every 3 weeks. And I went in. Um, so when I came home, my first treatment was in August. It was August 23rd. So I went from July to August 23rd, and I started my treatment plan from August 23rd um,
Mm.
with that particular doctor.
And then during the chemo, did you have a lot of side effects that are associated with chemo, like pain? Did you lose your hair?
Absolutely. And I think that's
Mhm.
when you make the comment, and I commented on your post. My aunt is a holistic doctor. She had been practicing for some time at that time. So of course when everyone in my family heard about it, they visit me and everything. So she was like, I want to treat you holistically. And she said she gave me a plan. So I removed the meat in my brother terms from my diet at the time. And she
Like
would
your brother knew he was in there making a clarion call. Yeah, it's the meat. It's the
it's,
meat.
I was like, why is he saying this? But and to believe it or not, I hadn't had beef or pork in my daughter at the time. I think she was 8, 9 years,
Hmm.
7 or 8 years, because I removed
Hmm.
that from my diet when I was pregnant with her due to other,
Hmm.
pain that I was having when I was pregnant with my daughter. So I went to my aunt and I would do the treatments with her. She would do her exam of my body. She would treat me the day before I would go into the doctor. So everything
Hmm.
was aligning up with everything she said. I recall my fourth treatment. They told me my white blood cell count was too high and they couldn't treat me. And she told me, she said, it's something that I'm noticing that you need to remove from your body. And I was like, she said, I don't know it, sometimes women um, who are diagnosed with certain type of women cancers are affected internally by something that they need to let go. It could be a man, a relationship, a father, uncle,
Mm.
a brother. And I was like, what? She said, it's
Mm-hmm.
toxic in your body. And I recall her
Mm.
saying it. And at that time, I was in a very, I would say, an unhealthy relationship. And from that day, I went to the doctor. And when the doctor told me that he couldn't treat me because my white blood cells was too high, I canceled that complete situation that I was in and
Mm.
said my life is more important, because I cried because I had told myself that I was ending cancer December 31st. So I had drew out
Mm-hmm.
my plan, meaning no more treatment, no more, medicine, anything.
Mm-hmm.
So that deterred my plan, because now that I couldn't do it this day, so that pushed it back.
Right,
And
right.
I just went completely just all in with everything my aunt was telling me when it came to food, what to eat, drink, everything. And I just practiced that for the remaining of my healing, my treatment process. And
Mm.
December 31st, I had my last chemo, and my family and friends had a little, celebration in the hospital room with me. So, oh, I'm sorry. Go
Oh,
back to your question with the pain. Yes, my hair started. I started to lose my hair. The medicine, they gave me a prescription for everything, and when I tell you the medication sat in my uh, bottom counter of my cabinet in the bathroom, and every
right,
time I
right.
would go to the hospital, it's like, we noticed that you haven't refilled your medication. I'm like, oh, I'm okay. And I was
Right.
juicing, I was drinking smoothies, teas,
Mm.
I was doing everything holistically and natural to fight. And the doctors were even concerned, like, you are you having any back pain? I drink some tea and I go to
Mm.
sleep and I
Mm.
rest, and so
Right,
yeah.
right, right. You bring up a really important point that your aunt brought up with you when your white blood cells were off, and she was saying something that you need to release. And I think, um, yeah, food is important. What we put in our body is important, but also those connections that
Yeah.
we have, those people we are tied to, that may be toxic to us, and we don't even realize that how it's impacting our health. Because one of the things that I've discovered is how impactful stress is to our well-being. If we're under a lot of stress, and sometimes we're under a lot of stress and we don't even realize it because we've
hmm
been under it so long, it's normal. It's like we don't even recognize it. And I just remember when I got my diagnosis, like the 2 years prior to my diagnosis, of course, wasn't eating well. I was eating the standard American diet, which was,
Right.
lots of dairy, sugar, and meat.
hmm
But the 2 years prior to my diagnosis, I had went through a serious financial crisis. Like, I had filed bankrupt, I had gotten evicted. I was like, and so 2 years before that diagnosis, I was dealing with a whole bunch of stress in addition to, the my poor eating habits. And so that just made a perfect opportunity for cancer to visit me.
hmm
But when I look back on it, though, my whole life had been stressed. I grew up, my dad was abusive to my mom, and I witnessed all that. We never talked about it. So I carried all that trauma and,
hmm
and suppressed it, never dealt with it until years later. And I think all of that impacts our health. And when we don't take care of ourselves holistically, mind, body, and spirit, we create an environment for things like cancer to happen. But
hmm
thank God for your aunt.
I
Thank
know.
God you had,
Yeah.
that was a blessing, because a lot of times, like we were talking about, people are kind of just pushed through stuff, and you're not really getting the care. You're not really
hmm
getting care. People are just treating whatever is on the paper or whatever they think, but you're not really getting care. Your aunt was providing you care. She was looking
hmm
at you, and That's so important because a lot of folks don't get that. And so,
Mhm.
what a blessing to have an aunt that had that wisdom to be doing that kind of healing work.
Yeah.
So, and God bless your brother because your brother knew it was the meat. And a lot of times, in our culture, if meat ain't on the plate, it ain't a complete meal.
Right.
That's our culture. If it ain't some piece of meat, a piece of chicken, a steak, it is not a complete meal. And that's just kind of how we have been raised. How
Mhm.
was it for you, though, making those changes when your aunt was recommended? Did you just willingly do it, or was it a struggle for you?
I would say kind of both. The
Mhm.
struggle up until now, I think up until this year, I completely, transitioned a lot of my eating and things, but having small children, and I recall talking to a friend most recently, and she's going through her battle, and she has her husband and children, and she said it's hard because now as the woman, the wife of the house, you have to still mother your household, and when your
Mhm.
children are small, they don't understand the change. So
Right.
it was hard to transition that way as far as eating. My son, he is a picky eater. If it's not
Mhm.
fried, if he hates vegetables, it was just
Mhm.
hard there. But my
Yep.
daughter is the opposite.
Mhm.
I always joke if my children sitting at the table as kids, my son give my daughter his broccoli and she'll take his they'll swap out
Just
because
yeah,
she'll eat
right.
the broccoli. He was like, you want some of my broccoli so I can get this one to eat right, this one
Right.
wants to eat wrong, but
Right.
that was the hard part for me.
Yeah.
That transition, as far as I still gotta prepare them food. I still got to eat. I thank God for my sisters. They would go on a journey with me. Okay, so we're giving it up. We're gonna do this. We're gonna, let's have
Right.
our sneak days where we'll grab that.
Right.
So it was there. It was the will to fight it, but it was also, hard with just your family. So
Right. Right. And so now you're cancer free. And how long have you?
yeah. So January 29th, 2015, there was no evidence of the disease.
Wow.
And my, I think I went 3 years of going to the doctor. My first 3 years, I had to go to take my CA 125
Hmm.
tester I think for the first year was every month. And then for the 2 years after, it was every 3 months. And then after my third year, it was just every 6 months. And then after I reached my fifth year of remission, it's just been every year. So I just recently had my treatment, my test, I'm sorry, my
Hmm.
CA
Right.
125
Right.
earlier this year. Still no evidence of the disease. So yeah, July 11, 2014 will be 10 years.
Wow. That's a blessing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. When you go and have those tests annually, do you still get a little nervous, or how do you feel when you?
So this one particularly, my level was like in a double digit, but it was 11. And I think she noticed how when she tell me like, okay, you're at I always ask my score. For some reason, a lot of people, I used to do a lot of speaking engagements, wanted to know like,
Mm.
so what's the number? What is the number we look
Right.
for? And so on
Right.
and so
Right.
forth. So when she told me, she was like, it was 11, but we're not concerned. That's how she approached it.
Right. Right.
Because she was like, you were at 36 when you were first.
Right. Right.
So she was
Right.
like, just, it have been some change in your health and everything. I
Mm.
said, yeah, I cut a lot of my meat and stuff out. She was like,
Mm.
oh, okay, I can see that being a problem. You got to find different foods and things to
Just-
offset that protein and
Right.
all of that you intake.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think I still have a little PTSD from my diagnosis. Like, first I went from there having to have the test done every 6 months after the cancer. Then it went to every year. But every year when I go, I still, even though, I know I'm doing all the things that I know to do,
Mhm.
every time I go, to have the test, I still get a little kind of hold my breath just bit until, you know, they said, no, you're good. You're
Yeah.
good. I think just a little PTSD. But so that was so you're doing fine. The cancer has hit multiple people in your family, your sister,
Mhm.
your mom, and your dad.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a
Yeah.
lot.
Mm.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Um, when did your sister get diagnosed?
So my sister was diagnosed 2020. My mom was diagnosed first in
Okay,
2019. She was
okay.
diagnosed before her.
Mm,
So they were right behind each other, not even a year
mm,
apart of their diagnosis.
mm,
And I recall my mom, being at her house, and she, was walking down the stairs, and she grabbed herself and she said, "I feel a knot." And I said, "Huh?" She asked me to, feel her breasts.
mm,
And it was lumpy, the
mm.
feel. So I didn't want to say like, yeah, I didn't want to think worst case scenario.
Right,
So
right.
I was like, have you, just go get it checked out. I didn't want to. I believe I sorry, mom. I believe she'd been, you know, felt this pain or, in her body. And I
Mm,
think that she just didn't know how to bring it to our attention. And so I didn't want to, go into that mode or get her depressed or anything about just
right.
thinking like, oh God, no, yes, So I was like, oh well, just make a doctor's appointment. Let's see what's going on. I was very
Mm-hmm.
calm with her. She did it, the appointment. I think my other sister went with her. I don't believe I went with her at the time. Um, and I was driving on the way to work, and I recall her calling and said, "Yeah, so didn't want to alarm you. That doctor's just called, and it is cancer." And
Mm,
she said they said stage 2, and they're going to start working on my treatment plan on, the diagnosis.
mm-hmm.
So I just went completely numb on the phone. Um,
Right.
and she was like, "Okay, I'm gonna call your sister." She was just calling us down the line, and she hung up. She didn't wait for me to say anything. I don't think I said anything. I don't recall. And then the
Mm,
next call, I recall calling my husband and crying hysterically, like just saying, "I thought I took one for my entire family. What did I do so wrong that, what I went through, which I know that that was, very painful experience. I wouldn't wish that on anyone, most importantly, my mother." And, he was trying to give me, encouraging words. And I just, hung up like, I gotta go. And I couldn't think, I couldn't work, I gave it some time because my siblings and I are very close. So I didn't want to overstep her. So I was waiting for someone to call me, or, what we do, just talk. Did mom just call you? Um, and they created a text chat, and it was just like prayer, like, we got this. And, Toy, you did this. We gonna do this. Mommy, cool. Like, it was all of that going. So it was hard that day. And from there, we just started working together, with her treatment. COVID hit, it pushed a lot of things back. So
mm,
we was doing it all through COVID, pretty
mm,
much. But yeah, we stood together as a family. And then again at work, I was in a meeting, and I think my mom knew I was in a meeting or something, because someone texted and said, "Can you answer? Can you talk? You think you can be excused?" And I was like, "Is everything okay?" And my mother had us all on the phone. My sister was at the doctor. She was crying. They just said I have cancer, and I just threw the phone like, what did I do so wrong?
right.
And this was my baby I just
What kind of cancer did your baby sister have?
She has stage 1 endometrial cancer.
Mm.
So,
Mm. So your mom was diagnosed in 2019 with breast cancer. 2020, your sister has stage 1 what is it?
endometrial.
Endometrial cancer.
Yeah.
Wow. So wow. So your mom is going through her treatment. Now your sister, how are you dealing with all this?
Mentally, it was hard because personally I experienced it. So I
Mhm.
knew the fight had to be
Right.
there. My sister, she didn't want to share with, anyone because when as it relates to our family outside of, the siblings, because we were still fighting my mother's battle. So my
Mm.
sister, her, because it was caught so early, she didn't have to have any procedure. She just did radiation. So she went through that like a soldier
Mm.
by herself. Like I don't even think she told her daughter. She had just said it. My niece was 2 or 3 at the time. So
Mhm.
she was just going and getting back to her regular schedule, and we were back on with my mother.
Did she have symptoms leading up to her diagnosis?
So what's kind of crazy is my sister was the one who um well, my mom had fibroid cysts, and she had to have a partial hysterectomy in her early 40s. But my sister had been battling uh, fibroid cysts for years, where the doctors had already canceled her out and told her she couldn't have children and so on and so forth. And she ended up going to my doctor, switching doctors, and they put her on a treatment plan and everything. She followed it, and she gave birth. She ended up having my niece so she was pregnant with my niece at the same time, and her cyst was growing, so it was like she was having
Mm.
twins. And they encouraged her because hers would come back so frequently that she should have, a hysterectomy right after, her 6 weeks of
Mhm.
giving birth. She was,
Mhm.
heavy on faith, like, no, if I can have this baby, it's, God is allowing me to get past that. No, you all are doctors. I'm following the most high. And she wouldn't do it. And she was
Mm.
just went through her little weight loss and eating everything transition. And it started coming back. And her symptoms started getting worse, where she was having 3-4 cysts growing in her at a time. So they told her if she wouldn't, that it would be a risk of her own life, um,
Mhm.
do the procedure. So that's when she found out. And then right after that, she ended up having her hysterectomy. I think it was about 2 years ago, the hysterectomy. And then she did the radiation and the hysterectomy. I hope I'm saying it correctly, but yeah,
And how's she now?
she's great.
Okay.
She's great. Yeah.
Now your mom. Uh,
So my mom was diagnosed in um, October 2019. She in into 2020, she finished all her treatments, and she was in remission. The cancer returned in August of 2021.
okay.
Yeah.
And then did she go through treatment again? Or?
Yeah. So they found through one of her, like we were talking, when you go back to get your treatments to just check to see every month, they she went to have reconstructive surgery. And
Mhm.
in the process they of doing the reconstructive surgery, they noticed um, some of her tissues and everything, and they tested it. And that's when they stated that the cancer may have returned.
Mm.
And during that process, they wanted her to come in immediately to try to, treat it. Um, and this was October because her birthday is October 17th. So
Mhm.
she waited to have the radiation again, and
Mhm.
it went from no, let me stop. I'm sorry. When they went, her blood, it was through her blood, and they noticed that it was in her eye. So it traveled to her eye.
What
The
the
cancer.
cancer traveled into her eye?
Mhm.
Oh wow.
So then they found this through the tissues through her reconstructive of her breast. So they still stated that it was considered breast cancer. It was at this point lobular breast cancer. So it travels through her bloodstream. So they was monitoring her blood every treatment, every process, every
Mhm.
visit. They had to monitor it because it can go from the when it goes to the eye, they were concerned that it will travel to the brain. But
Mm.
in this case, it went downward and then upward. So it went into the lining of her stomach. So first it started
Mhm.
in her eye. It became completely blind in her eye. Um,
Wow.
they did the treatments, the radiation. She had to do it every day. And then after that, she was having trouble with her esophagus and swallowing. So they tried to put a trach in her. So she had surgery on there. Then she wanted it removed because it was sticking her. She kept saying, "It's sticking me, it's sticking me." We just assumed that she wasn't given it time to heal, but it was something through that part that was started affecting the lining of her stomach. So she couldn't swallow or do anything. And this point, we were trying to juice and everything, and she was losing too much weight that she wasn't even able to like proceed with treatment. So it started
Mhm.
taking body fast. So it went from her eye to the lining and then the brain. So yeah,
Then her battle with cancer came to an end this past May, right?
May 12th. Yeah,
So sorry.
yeah.
You know, I saw some videos of your mom on your page, and all the videos made me smile because man, your mom was a dancing machine.
She,
I'm like, she was living while she was living. You know, she was living
yes.
while she was living. And you did something in honor of your mom, or kind of continued something that she started when she was diagnosed with cancer. She started something, didn't she?
So yes, living for better days. um,
Mm.
so in my, she was always my motivator. I'll begin there. So in my battle, she had actually did a cancer event. Our family had a bar, and she hosted an event, and I did not want to go because I was like, I didn't want to be in front of all these people. It was so early on
Right.
in my, remission, and I
Yeah.
didn't think I was ready, but it was so much outpour and people that showed up that her and I was like, yeah, we got to keep this going. You have to share your story. People wants to know you
Mm.
a testament, and I was like, oh, okay.
Mhm.
So she started, and we started with 7-Eleven Discovery to Recovery. That was the day I was diagnosed, and then my hashtag was Teal for Toy, because in September you go pink for breast cancer. Everyone wears pink, and fast forward. I'm sorry, let's rewind back. When I went to the cancer treatment center is where I learned of each cancer had its own color. So mine
Mm,
was
mhm.
ovarian, and it was teal. It was in the month
Mhm.
celebrated in the month of September, which is my birthday month. So we did
Mhm.
teal for toy. So that following year I had a big event, and it was teal for toy. And um, I had got into newspapers, local newspapers, got a lot of support. It was just amazing. So we did that, but I put it to a halt once my mom was diagnosed because
Mhm.
I can't help the world, and I'm
You
over
can't
here
do it
fighting
all.
with my,
Yeah.
So
Right.
um, I was, I put it on the back burner to be there for my mom, then turn around my sister. And so last year, she hosted an event because they were asking me, like, you doing an event? I'm like, no. Why are we doing events? Like, we need to focus on us. And that's how I was thinking. And she was like, oh, I'm doing one, and make me a shirt. I have a printing company. And she was like, make me a shirt, living for better days. And I was like, what is wrong with this lady? She's actually in treatment, but wants to speak to people about living for better days. And
Mm.
she did. She had it October 1st of last year. A lot of people came. She got her, message across. And so this year, my grief counselor recommended that we do something in honor of her for her birthday month, which her birthday is in October, and breast cancer is celebrated in the month of October. So I did a campaign through my print company and my website. We're going pink. Like every apparel that I had was pink. We had her t-shirts made. We did the walk with the sister strut, and we hosted a different private event for our family in honor of her. And just we went pink, and it helped because this was our first year without, like my cousin said, she was the glue to our family. So she like was really the matriarch. So it was like, how do we continue on? And I think that helped. So my goal is to continue her message, because even though I had this Till for Toy, we're going to still continue that. But in all actuality, she was right. We have to live for better days. And one of her last words to me was, because her and my dad, we were going from hospital to hospital. And my sisters and them left me and went to see him, and I was in the hospital with we were all in the hospital. We had to make a decision on Saturday for my dad and a decision for my mom on Sunday. So my brother, he was the person who signed for my father to go into hospice, and he forgot to date it.
Because your dad also had cancer and he passed as well.
Yes, he had prostate and colon.
Mm.
So he passed 11 days after. So my mom was May 12th. He was May 23rd. Yeah. But my dad didn't do
So,
anything. So he didn't go through no treatments. He pretty much told me a bunch of stories throughout this process that, oh, the CA 125, daughter, I'm just calling to tell you. They said my numbers are good. Okay, great, Dad. Like, so I'm thinking he's cool. And next thing you know, we get a call, April, the Thursday before Easter Sunday, that he was in the hospital. And I was like, what is wrong? So he just went into a coma, and he just never came out. But he took no medicine. He didn't do anything, no treatments.
you've been through so much. What
Mhm.
would you say to somebody who's right now, who's dealing with cancer themselves, or maybe have lost loved ones to cancer? What would you say to them?
See, I'm still that, that word of a curse.
Mm.
Funny you say that, because I'm my church family have a grief case, like a briefcase, but a grief case session every Tuesday, fellowship. And my pastor spoke this past Tuesday on what are the words that you went through. He had two questions. Would not want to say to someone that you're experiencing now, or would hope to say to someone. So a lot of people always say, sorry for your loss. And it's like, I didn't know how to accept that, because I
Mm.
was still trying to understand my loss. So I'm
Right,
learning how
right.
to correct that part. And then um, I learned to use my words different. People always say, oh, your mom, your dad passed. They transitioned, you know. So
Mhm.
I think we have to be more conscious of how we approach those. And I learned that, in the past with, people that experienced this, I didn't say the right things.
Mhm.
I didn't know how. So,
Right.
even with my grief counselor, she had, pointed out that I was, upset with how family and friends, how after the service, people said tomorrow is the day when they really need you. And I
Yeah.
didn't know how true that was until I had to experience it. So when I would show up to the services and funerals and things like that, I thought I was doing enough. But it's that day after that they really have to face that this person who is so important to them is no longer here.
Right.
So my goal is to live for better days. That's
Yeah.
my goal. To keep my mom and what she wanted for all of her children, um, just to keep that present for us and for her. What I would say to someone is just, communicate. A lot of times we rely heavily on doctors and their treatment plans, or um, what they say is the end all be all. And I experienced on both sides. As I said, my dad went through no treatment, and he, survived this the way he wanted to do it. Like, one of his favorite songs is "I'm gonna live life my way." And then I went with my mom, who she was heavy on doctors. She took all the medication. She did everything. Me personally, I didn't believe in none of that. So it's just, you got to understand that person that wants and support their needs. My dad just wanted us to show up until he was no longer able to. My mom, we had to support her through there. So everyone is different. I think that if someone is out there who is battling um, this horrible disease, first pray on it, and believe what you want to, to do that will help you, understand who you're fighting for. I had someone tell me, when you allow cancer to take over you, that's when it wins. And that was my journey through my fight. I knew that my fight was for my children. Um, so, um, just in a nutshell, one word, I don't have it, but just pray.
Right. Right. Uh, but I just want to thank you so much for sharing your story. I just believe your story is going to help so many people right now who might be going through this darkness of cancer, just to give them a little bit of hope, because when I look at you, you know how they say at church, you don't look like what you've been through.
No.
You certainly don't look like what you've been through. And like your mother said, she left us a message that we should all be living for better days. So thank you so much, LeToy, for your message and your strength and your courage. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and open me up to this platform to speak on what I've been through. I appreciate that. I've been following you for some time now, and using a lot of your recipes and everything. I think our stories are the same, so
Yeah.
I'm grateful to connect that way.
Yeah. Awesome. And then we'll have your social media stuff linked in.
Thank you.
In case some folks having an event or something, they need some merchandise, they can come. What's the name of your business?
Absolutely. J&J Custom. It's J&J Custom. J&J
J&J
Custom.
Custom. J&J Custom. All right. Thank you so much. And you
Thank
go
you.
ahead and go over there and take care of your grandmother.
I know, right? I got to get to her.